hi Oakwynites, all the people that have stayed tuned. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited about this conversation. I just had a rant talking about why this is so important to me, to these lovely three people. So I'm excited to dive right in. My name is Morgan Browne. I am one of the co-founders at Oakwyn Realty and president at Oakwyn Realty. And today I'm here to kick off what we call our kindness challenge. The purpose of the kindness challenge is to look around at our community, find something that we can do to help your community, and then just do it. And from here, we create these Instagram tags at Oakwyn and hashtag Oakwyn kindness, then pass it to three other nominated Oakwinites at the same time. The goal is to spread the kindness to the city, and I thought this would be a great way to kick it off. As a being born and raised in Vancouver, a realtor who really loves the city and loves this downtown core, as many people that know me know, I sell a majority in downtown Vancouver. I've noticed that that COVID this year has really taken a big change, and it's increased homeless and those that are struggling with addiction. So we are hosting this webinar today to start the conversation about homeless in Vancouver, to learn more about the causes, the people behind this number. And our goal is to become more informed on the subject and learn how we can help this situation. Today, I'm speaking to Together We Can, which is an incredible Vancouver addiction and recovery treatment facility, helping people rebuild the lives and relationships that they so well deserve. And we are allowed, I'm very happy to announce and to introduce the three that made their time today from Together We Can, the members, Courtney, Alex, and Samantha. I think let's start by just kind of diving right into it. And maybe we can talk, Alex, about homelessness in Vancouver and how COVID has really affected homeless in Vancouver in the last 6 to 7 months.
Yes, well, thank you so much to start off with. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this conversation. It's something that I'm really passionate about. As someone who is in recovery, as someone who has been homeless before, I certainly believe that when we have conversations, deep conversations, and we improve the quality of the relationship with the people in our communities, we can help the people that have less of a voice. So this is something that's I'm very passionate about. It's something that is a huge epidemic right now, especially with COVID. COVID has really hit the homeless population, not only because people that maybe didn't get enough money before are getting a little bit more money. However, what that is how it's happened is people aren't accessing the same amount of resources within the addiction community. And so I think that COVID has really put a damper on that. Also, when you are homeless and you don't have a fixed address, getting into treatment has really been quite difficult. In order to get into treatment now, you have to have screenings done. You have to be able to access more services, talk to doctors. And a lot of the times people, when you're homeless, you're in a fight or flight mode. You're in a survival mode. And I think COVID-19 has not only amped up the survival mode for everyone because there's a fear in the world, and they've also been afraid to access the services that are provided to them.
Wow, it feels like it was just day and night what happened. Really, it really changed overnight, and I feel like we talked a little bit of brief about what you're saying about you being personally homeless at one point. How has that affected you personally with this journey and where you are now?
Yeah, being homeless, this was 12 years ago. And when I was first introduced to the recovery world, I didn't know anything about how to access services. And the hardest thing for me to do was to get past the shame that I felt about being a person that literally people stepped over. And I see myself today as an accomplished, driven, charismatic, beautiful person. And I grew up thinking that. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, homeless people just don't have any drive. that's not the case. I came from a wonderful family. I had wonderful parents. I had an extended family that cared a lot about me. And the addiction that I went through brought me to my knees. And there was so many contributing factors when it came to trauma, when it came to the community that I was living in. I found myself at a place where I was educated and I could get a job, but I couldn't keep a job. And I could get a place, but I couldn't keep that place because of my drug addiction. And so things spiraled down and they spiraled down and they spiraled down. And so I found myself as a person that was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm a wonderful person and I'm educated and I have a beautiful family. Why am I sleeping on the street? Um, and it came to a point where the biggest thing was I didn't know how to access services. I didn't have people like this that were having conversations and people that were in the outreach teams having conversations to be able to say, look, this is how you do it. So I think that was one of the biggest barriers. I knew I needed help, but I didn't know how. And then contributing to that is I know people are wonderful in the world. However, there is a stigma that comes with addiction, and that is you're lazy, you don't try, and all you're going to do is spend your money on drugs. And that was part of it. But the other part was I didn't know how to break that cycle or get out of it. And what finally got me out of it was someone extending a hand that was in recovery, and they literally said, "Alex, you're coming with me today." And he kind of tricked me. He said, we're going to go for coffee. Then we're going to go by this place. And this place is wonderful. You're going to like it. I just want you to meet some people. But what he did is he just sort of dropped me off and left me there. And he said, you're not getting in the car. Alex, you're worth more than this. You can have a better life and let us show you how. And that was sort of the beginning of it. But the biggest thing that held me back was people literally would step over me because I just looked like a homeless person. And, there are some people that would help, but literally they would see you as one thing. And there was the stigma. And it just took one person that was in recovery and a team of their friends to say, we believe in you. You are worth more than this. Let's help you recapture that person that you were before, that you believed that you were before. And let's help you let's show you the way. And that's where recovery started. And it was just sort of one thing after another after another. And it was one person helping another person, not only people that were in recovery, but also people that were outside of recovery, people like yourself, people that extended more of a conversation. And I think, once again, these are conversations that we just need to have more within the community and educate people and let them know that that person that's sleeping in the doorway is not someone who necessarily wants to be there. They're just trapped in a cycle. They're surviving and they don't know how to get out. So you can be that one person. You can be that one person to help them.
You nailed it. I think, Alex, I think over and over people think there's definitely a stigma that goes with it. And they think, oh, well, they had a bad circumstance. What you just said to me is exactly what people are thinking. How do you think that stigma affects homelessness? Like, I mean, in the sense, you're telling me that, do you think people just ignore people because it's like, they think that they're like, immediately I think people think they came from a bad family. They were trapped in some sort of addiction that came from the mother. Like, that's the conversation. How do you think that affects the people that are homeless about that stigma? I mean, weird question to ask. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And to get help with this, I actually I asked some of the clients that I currently work with, what was the stigma when you were homeless? What was the biggest stigma that you came across? And a lot of it was, they're afraid of me. They don't know how to talk to me. And they think that I am lazy and I'm worthless. And that was the number three that kept on, the three that just kept on coming up. The number one was, I'm fearful of you. I don't know how to approach you. And those were the biggest ones that came up. And unfortunately, I do work with a lot of people that are like that today. And, I think the biggest thing that people can do to break that stigma is to really say, hello, and to say, can I help you with anything? And also, if somebody's asking for money for food or to something like that, to realize, you know what? They probably are hungry. And to not be afraid of that and not to have the judgment that, you know what, you're homeless, you're just going to spend it on blah, blah, blah. No, the number one thing is it's really people are telling the truth. They're hungry. They need shelter. They need help accessing services. And again, another thing that people could do is when they're on the street is if somebody says to them, oh, can you help me? You know, Educate yourself and say, what can I do for that person? Get to know the different shelters that are in your area. Get to know the people that are in your community that can help. Together We Can is one of them. Put that number in your phone. We all have smartphones. We all can Google, this is Together We Can. Can I help you get in somewhere? Educate yourself on where the detox centers are. Educate yourself into where your community outreach team is. You can put a few of those numbers into your phone. And if you ever see someone that needs help, say, hey, you know what? I know of these places. Can I help you? Right? And just you extending that hand and not having the assumption that this person just wants money to get drugs, or this person wants money to put their life away and to not care. Like, you caring and saying, hey, I can do this. You can break that stigma by not having those assumptions and educating yourself on the resources that are available to you.
I love it. I think when I see, when I put into those situations where I see someone that's really, really hungry, or they're sick, the first thing that goes through my mind is that's someone's son. Like, I have a child. That could be someone's dad. That could be, it's
Yes.
a whole, there's a whole stigma that goes to, they're in a different category. And you need to remember, I think every Vancouverite needs to remember, they are people that have a huge, what you just said, they have a family and friends and people that care about them, but they're trapped in this cycle. And if they're asking for that help, or even if they're not asking for the help, and being able to assist them in some other way, it goes a long way. So right away, I'm going to go ahead and put Together We Can's number on our screen so people can save that in their phone. And then also at the end, we will kind of go talk about kind of how the connection, but that's, it's a huge, huge, huge. I do have one last question, Alex, about, when it comes to accessing treatment, what barriers do you feel impact a person that's struggling with addiction and homelessness? What's the barriers there for them?
I would say the number one barrier is being able to get someone into treatment quickly. When somebody asks for help or they say they want to go into treatment, removing some of those barriers and being able to get people into treatment quickly, right when they have that time. Currently, to get into detox, there's like a 3-week or 4-week wait to get someone into detox. I think more of a conversation needs to happen around people being able to get into detox quickly, or more detoxes. Another barrier, people might not have a phone. They will, you have to be able to call in. There's lots of places, when people access our intake team, they have to be able to call, not having access to a phone. Another one is having the ability to go into a community center. A barrier is, I'm ashamed of the way I look. I'm ashamed of the fact that maybe I haven't showered in 3 days. I am really hungry, so I can't think properly. Some of those core survival things, those, basic physical needs are a stigma that comes into play. And, huge things. And it's a barrier. It was a barrier for me. And I know it's a barrier for many of the clients that I have spoken to in that sense. And, understanding that if somebody is asking for help or they're asking for those services, helping them to have the connection to the resources that are available.
Oh, that's great. I think this leads right into, speaking of Courtney here about mental health, those two go side by side. I think when we're talking about walking into a facility and not having enough confidence, or not even having, or even just feeling very unsure of themselves, or not feeling like they should be in that space. How do we encourage the conversation if we think or observe that our loved one is struggling with mental illness? What are some steps for us to do that, and how to?
I think, as a theme in COVID, I saw a huge theme, sort of society putting the message out there that we should put on a brave face. We should be grateful for what we have. And whilst I agree with that, I think Vancouver, BC, there was so much to be grateful for. I feel like it created this stigma. If someone said I have anxiety, or I'm depressed, or I'm not having a good day, when the response is, suck it up, look at what you've got, it creates mental health as a negative. And for me, that's the biggest barrier of people don't want to say they're anxious, or they don't want to say they're struggling, because they assume the response might be, straight into the fix it, well, look at what you've got. And I think what we need to do is be able to hold that space with our loved ones. Empathy is not fixing it. It's not minimizing it. It's not comparing ourselves to it. It's saying, I hear you and I see you. And I see you're struggling. And I think the stigma around mental health is that it's a negative thing. Anxiety, depression, I think we've all had our highs and lows in the last few months. And so I think just being able to open that space for a loved one in a place where you're just going to join them and see them, and not go to the solutions right away, that to me is the best way to open up the conversation.
Oh, I think that's such a great way. Like, what I'm hearing is, I don't want to fix it. I think that's the biggest problem with for generation or our city is, oh, what's your problem? We should just give you a solution. Let's just fix it. It's let's just be present with it. Let's listen to you. I hear you. And I really want to be a part of, if you let me kind of be a part. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. I know during COVID, it's been really a struggle, I think, in all different ways, whether you're fortunate enough or whatever it may be. But, I personally have friends that have struggled have had a lot of struggles during COVID. And it's interesting how people cope and how they feel like they have to have a solution, but it's like they're too tough on themselves. They need to just be where it is and really acknowledge it. How do we respond when our loved ones and they're coping with mental illness, like what I'm just mentioning about how someone's telling me, I'm really struggling right now. How do we cope? How do we respond to them? And how do these addictions vary, I guess, in mental health?
Yeah, I think the first thing when we are looking at a loved one, I think, again, we want to be curious and notice changes. So if we notice behavioral changes in a loved one, if we notice their socializing shifts, they've started avoiding more, they've started isolating, mental health and addiction, it usually moves to a place of isolation and lack of social connection, which is why together we can't exist. So I think if we notice some changes in our loved ones, they're staying up later, they look really tired, they're not socializing, they're not eating, we start to wonder what's going on for them. And then to open up a conversation with open-ended questions. How are you doing? Not necessarily going to a place of labeling what we observe, but just opening up space and saying, hey, just let me know how you're doing. I really want to kind of join you and convey a with attitude. Again, not going to a fix it, I think you should go to the gym, or I think you should do a yoga class, which is easy for us to suggest, but to not go to that place right away, because it creates a disconnection. It creates the idea that we have expectations of our loved ones that maybe they're not measuring up to, which again can reinforce isolation and all of these negative core beliefs that go with, I think, negative mental health and addiction.
Yeah. How much do you feel like the mental health and the stability of that really makes an impact on addiction? Like, how much of that mental illness is triggered by, or I guess addiction triggered by mental illness?
Yeah. I would say with most of my clients, most if not all, addiction is an attempt to cope. It's an attempt to manage, and whether that's an attempt to lift a low mood, or whether it's an attempt to bring down anxiety, suppress and erase trauma. Every client I work with was trying to do the best they could with what they had. And so low resources, whether that's mental health or social supports, they were struggling and they couldn't see a way out. And so in that way, you know, you can't really separate mental health and addiction because they go hand in hand. And I think with the stigma with both of them, if someone doesn't want to reach out because they're struggling and they want to put on a brave face to loved ones, a lot of clients say they put on a brave face because when they're upset, it upset their loved ones. And that's, I think, where the conversation, we need to educate ourselves on how to support family members and not take on their pain, but be able to hold it and then help them look for a solution.
Oh, I love that. And do you find that, like, this is just another random question now, I'm wondering, do you have any, how much in the rehab, the recovery, the treatment goes towards attention to mental health? Like, how much of that? Is it from tip to toe, or is it, you know, do you guys do it in segments? Again, I'm educating here, people.
They go hand in hand, and what I love about TWC is they prioritize mental health as much as they prioritize the addiction work. So I work on the clinical side of the road with mental health, and then we have our wonderful addiction counselors. We work alongside each other, and we recognize that you can't treat one without the other. You can't treat mental health and not look at the addiction, and you can't treat the addiction without treating the mental health. Otherwise, they will fall into each other. And it's the number one piece I love about TWC is we look at the whole person. We look at where you came from. We go all the way back to early childhood. What are the messages? How were you shaped by your childhood? How were you shaped? You know, the number one question I ask clients is who saw you? Who got you? When you were little, when was the first time you remember someone seeing you and getting you? And if a client says to me, no one, first of all, my heart breaks a little bit. But second of all, I know where the work is going to go as a mother myself. For a child not to be seen or heard or to be told, you know, not to have emotions, that just stop crying, you're upsetting mommy, or, you know, all of these, or go to your room to calm down, and sort of all of these things where early on, if the message is that mental health is something not to be seen, you know, that's often where the work goes, is to go back and say, how can we rewrite this script for you? How can we rewrite the script so that you see that you matter? That's not the story for everyone, but for some clients, it's going back and rewriting that script. It's often I'm not working on addiction, I'm working on self. I'm working on self-esteem. I'm working on how do you manage when you have uncomfortable feelings? What are tools that you can use?
I love that. Yeah, it's great. Let's move into addictions. Samantha, I love this. I love that they go hand in hand, they come together. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. So, you know, that this is not just a addiction thing. This is a mental health. We're really trying to kind of connect, and TWC does a beautiful job at really targeting those things together. How do we end the stigma of addiction? I think that's the first question I want to get out of Samantha. Thank you for being here too.
Absolutely. And I think Alex kind of talked on it a little bit in his homelessness. They kind of are around the same pieces. Some of the things around ending the stigma around addiction is really about education. We need to educate not only our families and loved ones and our friends, but also the community as a whole. Addiction is a disease. So I've heard numerous times, even from family and friends, and just say like, well, you could just stop. Well, they can't. The fact of the matter, they can't just stop. If they wanted to, and if they could, they would. But we have to treat addiction as a disease, just like we do any other disease that gets all the focus. I mean, COVID, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but COVID really has exemplified the opioid crisis in Vancouver. We have dual pandemics right now. And we, as a society, we need to recognize that there's individuals out there, their mental health is crumbling due to COVID. The supports aren't out there. We just need to create education and awareness. And Alex said it perfectly when, you just have to ask someone. All it takes is asking someone, how are you? what's going on for you and listen. And just start opening up that conversation. If you make yourself comfortable with hearing it, it allows that person to feel more vulnerable themselves and to share more and to finally kind of release some of that weight that's on their shoulder. People in addiction are often hiding it. They're isolating. They're not telling anyone about it. They think that they're really good hiders. In some cases, they're not. People know, but no one knows. They're afraid to ask. They're afraid to bring it up. They're afraid that if they mention it, they're going to use harder or run away from it. But we start that dialogue. We start those conversations. I see you. I hear you. I know you're hurting. I know you're struggling. How can we help?
I love that. Addiction is such an incredible, I think, when I think of addiction, I just, it's, people think that they feel stronger, but I think in my mind, I think too, when I see someone that's, having a trip or having going down that hole, I just see, they just need a lot of help, and they need a lot of help, and and not only do they need a lot of help, but they're powerless. Like, they really, at this point, there come to a point when, there's a powerless point. And I think when I, as somebody that's just observing, the question I always have is, what do I do? What do I do? And I think you're right. There's a huge stigma with fear of being able to go up to them, or that they're going to freak out, or they're going to run away or something like that. What do you guys think, just general public wise, other than if they're, if they're down on the ground and, whatever it may be, and they feel less threatened, is that the best time to approach? What's the best time to approach that? And going up to them and asking them, can I help you? Is there timing for this, or is it just a do it whenever you feel like it, or do it all the time kind of thing? What do you guys think?
I think checking in with your family and loved ones regularly, and checking in with people that you surround yourself with, and just keeping that dialogue open, keeping those conversations. If it's someone you see on the street, just like Alex mentioned, walk up to them.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How can we help? What do you need today? It doesn't have to be, like Courtney said, it doesn't have to be a quick fix. It doesn't have to be an immediate solution, but we start opening up those conversations. I feel so many times people are like, I wish I had said something, but that individual passed away, or that individual overdosed, or they're in hospital and they're fighting for their lives, and people always say, I knew and I didn't say anything. So I think at any time you see someone struggling, there isn't a right or a wrong time to bring it up. Just get the conversation started. Is that person going to be in the right head frame to hear it? Maybe not, but at least it was out there, and maybe something was heard and entered their brain. And the more conversations, or the more times you bring it up, the more times it's going to start to hopefully sink in that someone is hearing, someone is seeing, someone is there.
Yeah, and I think more times than not, you are going to help. That's what I'm hearing is, if you just asking and listening to them, you will help. I can tell you just personally, my dad, and I was mentioning to you guys, me living downtown, there was one individual that we knew that was going through addiction, family, friend, or whatever it may be, and, kept him going through these loops. And my dad was really the person that kind of said, I'm here for you if you need anything. And I would see the gentleman who come into his workplace and come in for food and be there. But, it's interesting. It does, what's so nice about what my dad taught me is it just took that quick reach out. And because of that, it allowed him to realize there was somebody seeing him. And that really enabled him to get into recovery. And I think that's what I'm hoping to get people out of this, is that those quick conversations, those 1, 2, or 3 questions that you're going to have to these people that are in addiction, even if you even know the slightest that they're going through something, mental health, it does go a long way. And I do have another big question, which is about COVID, as we're kind of COVID central. how has it impacted those struggling with addiction and recovery right now? Like, what's been the main, Samantha, what has been the main thing that you've seen, and how they've been impacting, how it's been impacted during COVID?
So I think Courtney kind of nailed it on the head with mental health. So many things have closed down, jobs lost, support services are lost. We have a lot of people, like as we are right now, we're all electronic right now having this conversation. There's a lot of people who don't have access to that. There's a lot of elderly individuals who might not know how to access it.
Mm-hmm.
There's services being closed. You couldn't get into a Service Canada office. You couldn't get into a Ministry of Social Development and Innovation office to apply for services and funding and resources unless you had a phone or a computer. Advocacy units were closed down. They weren't accessing them. A lot of these services, even today, still are not open. And we are in October. We're into the cold and wintry months when things kind of are detrimental to individuals out on the streets of Vancouver and across Canada and really anywhere. I've seen the mental health is a big piece that drives people into finding a coping mechanism. People are at home all the time now with their loved ones, with their children. Kids weren't in school for the longest time. Parents had that added stress of no daycare, having to take time off work, having to now be a teacher, a parent, a staff member, all of these things, and not having a place to go to find a relief because you couldn't be out in the public, essentially. You couldn't send your child somewhere. They couldn't go on play dates. You couldn't go out with your friends to have, a couple hours or a chit chat or a dinner or anything like that. That just didn't happen. And so the mental health scene in families, a quick thing, and I've seen it with friends through this time, is their alcohol consumption goes up. Marijuana is legal, so marijuana consumption's going up. Those things that people have access to are skyrocketing right now because that is their only outlet right now. I work closely with a few unions, and one of them is the film industry. The film industry had a big boom in addiction because they were off work for the longest time. And I work closely with some of their EAP workers, and they were like, let's get you help. Let's focus on your mental health. But it takes those people to recognize it. And COVID has just, with CERB, people are applying and they're not eligible. So now there's that added financial stress and mental health and concern and worry and all of these things that are just coming into play. And Together We Can has never been so busy as we were during COVID-19. A lot of the treatment centers closed their doors. They stopped doing intakes. They stopped taking phone calls. And some of them now are just starting to reopen, but Together We Can we've been open this entire time. We work closely with our Vancouver Coastal Health Authority to make sure that COVID protocols are there so that people out there who are struggling or who do need help, they have a place to go. And so, I hope COVID ends soon or things come into play, because there's a lot of people out there who, we're sitting in our offices or in our homes right now, but there's a lot of people out there who don't have that, I'm going to call it a luxury right now. They don't have access to it. And they don't have the supports that they need right now.
Yeah, it's been a really tough time, and speaking to everyone at TWC at Together We Can, it made me realize how many just lack of resources that people had, and how many people, and I guess to kind of end our conversation, which I'd love to hear from all of you guys, popcorn style, is with all these lack of resources and what's happening with COVID and the time that we're dealing with. And, what do you think the general public can do at this point? What can they do to assist, whether it's being extra hands or, advocating for fundraising? Like, what can people do to help?
So one of the things around education is actually Together We Can offers a family program. And it doesn't have to be for anyone in our program. It could be for anyone in the community across Canada, wherever they like. And it's a program for family and friends and loved ones who can understand addiction. They can maybe understand what the individual's going through, but they also get to understand, if they are firsthand experience of someone or alone with addiction, how they can help themselves. It starts having that conversation, so they know what those people are going through. They understand, or have kind of a light shone on them on what it is that they are feeling and experiencing, but they also get the support they need to help themselves help another individual as well. And it's as simple as calling Together We Can and wanting the family program. As I mentioned, it's open to literally anyone who feels they might be having a friend, a loved one, or anything like that. They don't have to be a member of our Together We Can community.
That's a great tip, Samantha. We'll put that down there for everybody to contact for the family program. I think that's a really good step. How about you guys?
I think it starts with forums like this, and like Samantha saying, education. At the base of this is going to be shifting perceptions. A lot of our clients, they come in and they say, I wanted help 5-10 years ago, but I viewed it as a weakness to ask for help. It is not a weakness to ask for help. It is the ultimate, courage and ultimate strength position to ask for help. It starts with our perception that if we open a door, enter it with empathy and say, hi, I'm here, I see you. We're creating opportunities. And as you've discussed, it may not be the opportunity that client or that homeless individual takes, but it may be one little shell along the way that led them to getting help. So we may not, not doing actions to see change, but to do them because we believe that we are investing in someone. And when we see people, we invest in them. We tell them that we believe in them, and that does, immeasurable, it gives immeasurable positivity to someone, even if we can't see it. To know that we are bridges. If we create an opportunity, we might be able to bridge them, like Alex and Samantha said, to a service. The biggest message is that you're not alone. There are professionals out there. I think sometimes we think therapy is just talking. It's not. It's learning about yourself. It's shining a flashlight into all the different parts of yourself, and then it's building tools. And so my biggest honor of working at TWC is we arm individuals with self-awareness, and we send them off with tools. We send them off with resiliency, and again, the biggest thing we do is we build a community of love and support around them. So anyone can be part of someone's community just by seeing them, telling them you see them, offering them a granola bar, a coffee from Tim Hortons. Enter into their world and see that you've created an opportunity to connect.
These people are really asking for help. They're actually saying what they really need. Like, they're hungry. Like, they're hungry out there. Stop. Stop. Give them a dollar or two. I don't care what you give them, but don't ignore them. Don't ignore them. And I think I'm going to get all teary with that, but it's very tough. But Alex, what about you? What are some tips here for what people can do?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to start this off by agreeing with everything that you said. It's important to realize that, yes, somebody could be hungry. Yes, give them, a dollar or two. It definitely makes a difference. But this is my personal challenge to anyone and everyone out there, regardless of whether you want to give money or where you want to give someone a hug or you want to say hello. I want everyone to tackle and muster up the most courage and vulnerability that they have within them and go and say hello to someone. And I'm getting emotional here because sometimes it's not what you give, it's the action that you take to just say what Courtney had said before is, I see you. All you need to do is say hello and to say, I see you. If you feel like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna go to McDonald's and I'm gonna get you a burger, great. And even if the person's there on the street, you can just put it beside them. If you want to go further and talk to them and see how they're doing, educate them on something, just ask them how they're doing, how they got there, what their family's like, whatever the case is, do that. or you could take it further. I received the most amazing, amazing note when I was homeless. This was so many years ago, but it still sticks with me. And somebody wrote me a letter, and all they put on there is, I care. And if there's anything you need, this is your number. And that, I didn't call the number, obviously, but the simple fact that somebody took the time to write something was the biggest thing that took my heart. So if there's anything I can have as a challenge to anyone, it's to muster up their vulnerability, because just as much as you might be afraid, that person's afraid as well. And they're afraid of being seen. They're afraid of being heard. They're afraid that their voice doesn't matter. And their voice does matter. And you have the power. You have that power to change someone's life by simply saying hi. So that's my challenge to you.
I'm with you on that, Alex. You just, I'm gonna, I get nervous cry, so I'm gonna laugh, cry. But after this, I'm sure I'll be crying in the corner. But I just want to thank you guys for joining us and sharing your expertise and helping us spread this awareness of this important issue that we are facing in our communities. It's not just our community, it's all across the world, but I think if we can just do something in our city, we can make some real impact, which I'm really praying for, and I'm hoping we can get to that next level. The purpose of this webinar today is to help spread this awareness, to educate as much as we can. But I've certainly learned a lot talking to the three of you guys, and together we can. You guys are doing some amazing work, and I'm sure that this is not the last you're going to see of me for sure. And I hope that we can all kind of go into this winter month. One thing I got from my conversations is this is the toughest, when we break into this, but it's also the time where people really think maybe I should go through rehabilitation. Maybe I should go through, treatment. This might be the time for me because this is the opportunity that we have. So I think this is a very important time for Oakwyn Kindness Challenge to not just stop here, keep on spreading, educate. I'm going to drop some numbers down for everyone to take. And I wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.